Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Dr. ETV. I am Dr. Espen. Today, I'm here interviewing an incredible entrepreneur that has an awesome story. So if you're interested in learning how to be successful in life, in career, vocation, mission, finances, life, and impact in general, stay tuned because this is going to be absolutely epic. Today, I'm interviewing Rowan Hill. Rowan has a very unique and interesting story as to where he started and where he is now, having gone from being an electrician by trade to trialing various businesses and ventures over many, many years. His passion is to be able to understand early stage of business that impact the greater human experience on the planet in a positive way. So he's got a very unique perspective on the relationship between how we can understand business, and he's got a very unique way of looking at big business, something that when I looked at it, I couldn't agree more. So this is going to be quite disruptive in the conversation, but it's also going to give you some good perspective as to what we might be doing in the future. To give you some context, Rowan has, over the last 10 years, built an impressive network of incredible people all over the world. He's been successful in the energy sector, mining, finance, blockchain, technology, sustainable systems. He's a vivid snowboarder. We went to New Zealand snowboarding together not too long ago, had an absolute ball. So I want to say a special welcome, Rowan. How are you doing, brother?
Mate, pleasure to be here. And yeah, thanks so much on the intro on that snowboarding trip. I tell you what, I'm getting itchy to go on another one already.
I can tell. Mate, this is really exciting. So just for those out there who don't know your story, coming from being kicked out of school, okay, because we're so often here, you got to go to school, you got to go to uni, you got to get good grades so you can, AKA be a slave to the system. Right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And there are people out there, if you want to be a doctor, you're going to have to go to school. It's all good. But tell us a little bit about your story. How can someone go from being kicked out of school, striving to be an electrician, to get to where you are now, this multi-million-dollar entrepreneurial, traveling the world, successful businesses, venture capitalist kind of private equity level? Do tell.
Yeah, sure thing, man. It's certainly an interesting story. But I was always, as growing up through school, interested in different topics that were outside of the general curriculum. And I was always going down little rabbit holes, understanding whether it's energy, tech, emerging things in the market and whatnot. But I ended up starting my career as an electrician by trade. So I started that at the age of 16. And that's the way you go through the 4-year apprenticeship. So I spent 4 years going through doing my trade, becoming a tradesman by the time I turned 20, but being in that environment where I was surrounded by guys that are 50 to 60 years old, spending half a year away from their family and friends and just disconnected from, I guess, the community as such, I just always knew that wasn't for me, and I had to find a way to get out of that particular trade. And at the age of, I think it was 22, where I first got exposed to audiobooks, coaches, and mentors. At the time, one of my older cousins, he was having some digestive issues, and he introduced me to a multi-level marketing company called Your Health back in the day. And that was basically promoting all of the super greens, the probiotics, and all of the stuff just to promote essentially good gut health. And going down that, there you go, you got the greens. Going down that, rabbit hole there, and as to understanding how that multi-level marketing work and that particular industry, it was very, very interesting to me because there was a very low barrier to entry, meaning that anyone could just jump in and start. All of the business infrastructure was there for you to leverage. The credibility and the network as such was already kind of formed in a way where I could step in and just host events and without having to spend too much. So yeah, I started reading books and working with coaches and mentors and everything at the age of 22. And that there was I guess one of those moments in life where you hear people say they've hit that rock bottom. For me, I got myself in a bit of trouble with the wrong circles. I was coming out of a long-term relationship, and I just knew that I needed to shift the immediate table I was sitting at pretty quickly, because it wasn't serving the purpose as to what I wanted to create and what I thought my potential could be. But yeah, that there was the starting, I guess, for where I really started to sink my teeth into business. But even going down through that, Your Health, I quickly became one of the larger reps in North Queensland, having hosted little seminars in Airlie Beach, Mackay, Townsville, Hamilton Island, and Cairns. But at the same time, I was in a bit of a space where it was, I guess, living out of alignment. I was preaching good health all week, but at that point in my life, I was still partying quite heavily, and it just didn't fit with me over the coming years. So I ended up stepping out of that and stepping into a similar model in coffee, but I found myself in, once again, out of alignment because I don't drink coffee, and which is funny. But yeah, I had that, and then also a clothing label. And throughout this whole period, I was, trialing and just trying to find, I guess, that sweet spot where I was doing something that I actually really liked. But it took a lot of, I guess, books, which helped me to, over the years, I guess, figure out where exactly I wanted to fit as an entrepreneur in the world of opportunities that are out there. And I think two of those key books there were that was that Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki and Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Work Week, because I looked around, and even a lot of business owners and whatnot out there, I seen this like a lot of mates that are busting their ass all day, every day, and having to work like around the clock, exchanging time and energy. And when they would step out of their business or wanting to go on a holiday or travel around the world or something, they couldn't exactly do that. So I started to really unpack that cash flow quadrant, and that was a part there where I started to transition a little bit further into what I wanted to do.
I love it. I just take note on specifically what you've said for those young and up and coming, not just young in age, but young in terms of their entrepreneurial career. Those listening out there that think, oh, what am I going to do? I don't know my purpose. Where do I start? I think the biggest problem for many people is that they actually never do start. So Rowan's such a great example. Here you are talking about, he started with network marketing, right? Jumping in there to an infrastructure that's built. It's a really powerful system if you truly do believe in it. He's successful in it. He's traveling around. He's teaching seminars. Okay. And then he starts a coffee business and then a clothing brand, right? So he's going from different types of businesses. But I think what I'm really getting here is giving it a go. And you're going to learn a lot of cool stuff along the way, and then trialing something else and giving it a go. And then you're going to learn a lot of cool stuff along the way. So I just want to speak to this, the hesitation or indecision that I very often see in my clients as well, which is, okay, well, if you want to be a soulpreneur, I call us soulpreneurs. We're coming from a place of love and we're entrepreneurs, right? So if you want to be an entrepreneur or a soulpreneur, well, you're going to have to start, you're going to have to give it a go, and it's not going to be perfect, but the place to start is wherever you are right now. This is what I'm getting from this. I absolutely love it, brother. So I know that you've been across many different sectors, that's many different things. I want to ask you, what are some of the main obstacles that you see entrepreneurs or people that want to start, or maybe even people successful in business to get to the next level when they hit that ceiling? What do you think that is? And what have you experienced in your life?
Yeah, definitely, man. I think when I look at my own journey and just that, I guess the key next transition where I went from being an electrician by trade to getting into the finance sector, a big part of that next step was all about the people that I surrounded myself with, those mentors and coaches, because at the end of the day, like, you can all go down the path and learn on your, learn as you go and just kind of wing it through the process of business as such. But I found just being able to connect with those individuals that have had a strong track record, they've actually done it before, and being able to connect with them and work with them and learn from them just accelerates that whole journey. Because no matter where you get to in business, there's always a ceiling that you kind of go, okay, what's the next step? And that is a great way just to live and learn. And I did a big part of that. I'm still doing that today. But being able to connect with other people that have already done it before, finding who those industry leaders are in the sector that you're wanting to move down, and then having conversations with them. We've all heard that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And as soon as you start to be able to rub shoulders with some of these people, you all of a sudden become exposed to other opportunity. And if you do have like a strong enough relationship with them, their networks become your network. And all of a sudden that opens up many, many doors, and it almost kind of leapfrogs you because you're just like capitalizing and leveraging off the success that they already have. And I find that's a great way to even expand your own vision, because they may know something that you don't know around the potential or what could be. And that could be something that helps you to eliminate certain deficiencies within your business. It could be the next milestone to take you to that next level where you've got an exit opportunity or whatever that may be. But yeah, it's just tapping into that creativity and wisdom that people have that have already done it.
I love it. Take a note. So for those of you watching, go back and listen to that again. Pause and write notes. This will be my best recommendation. Here we're talking about a concept called modeling the masters. Okay. And not just modeling the masters, but being in their vicinity. That's one of the things that I'm so grateful that we've had the opportunity to do together, Rowan. Excuse me. And also you've introduced me to so many people. I mean, recently we flew down to Sydney, had an awesome gathering again, and just being with those people, developing those relationships. And I've got a thing that I teach in what's called my accelerator program, which is my life coaching program. And I take people through 2 weeks of studying how they spend their time, being really clear on what amount of time that they spend sleeping, cooking, cleaning, working in the business, on the business. And I've got a principle in there, which literally I calculate the amount of time that I spend with people like that. So I've got goals specifically for me to spend time with people like yourself, with people like Julia, many other people in our circle, because I know that one of the keys to success is to rub shoulders with and socialize with people who are more successful than you are, than we are. They can, one, teach us things and so on and so forth, and also introduce us to people. So this is a key element, guys, for those watching, listening. If you want to be successful, the question is right now, who are the leaders in your industry, in your community that you could connect with? Okay. Partnering with performers, whatever you might call it. And then you write down those names, and then you contact those people and you ask to take them out for lunch, spend some time with them, pick their brain, study their marketing material, look at their online campaigns, look at what they're doing, and get into their social circles. As you mentioned in the beginning, beautifully, Rowan, changing tables over to a successful table where you want to find yourself. I love it, bro. Now, you've been on a very cool journey, and I know you're up to some really cool things in Norway, which we'll talk about soon. But before we do, I kind of want to check in. I remember you had a really cool story, and this blew me away. So I met Rowan. We start to hang out. We realize, he's looking for a social circle. I've been here for a while. We start to hang out. We become bros, friends, and, he introduces me to amazing people who we hang out and we live life, right? It's just been brilliant, right? But I remember one story, and you told me, we were talking about cryptocurrency. And we were talking about, Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder of Bitcoin, or, crypto in general. And you said, oh, yeah, that is such and such. And I looked at you and I said, hang on, are you telling me that you know who Satoshi is? Because no one knows who Satoshi is, right? At least not commonly or publicly. And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, shit, right? That was my first response back then. And after that, a little while later, another guy told me as well. And then I've done my studies. I've looked at the research. I've looked at what's going on in the courts, and it seems pretty freaking bulletproof. So can you tell us the story of how you got introduced to Satoshi Nakamoto, the journey that you went on, the boat trip? Take it wherever you want to take it, brother. And just give us some context as to how important it can be to, well, I guess one, believe in your dreams, and two, also, as you mentioned before, surround yourself with the right kind of people.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting story. Yeah. I've been in Bitcoin since 2012, for those who don't know. And I'm one of those horror stories where I actually lost the access to my paper wallet in 2014 and had to start again. And having to go down that process where you've lost all of your wealth and go back to being a Sparky, saving up again to be able to take a position back in late 2015, that was a big thing. And I was fortunate enough at the time, a couple of my mentors and business partners, this is in late 2016, they'd seen my own journey and they knew that I'd learnt the hard way. So they put their trust into me, knowing that if I'm going to put my money in again, I would ensure that I put all the correct recovery systems and protocols in place to ensure that if anything was to happen to me, that my family would be taken care of. And a part of this process and the education piece was, we were like, what better way to understand cryptocurrency and that industry as a whole than to go and rub shoulders and meet the most influential people in the space. And there was a cruise back in late 2016, started 2017 sometime there, and it was called Coins Bank, where there was 250 of the most elite people in the world on this boat, where we flew over to Singapore, went from Singapore to Malaysia, from Malaysia to Paradise Beach in Thailand and back to Singapore. And being on the boat, I'm a bit of a social butterfly. So I was like rubbing shoulders with all of the people like John McAfee from the internet cybersecurity company.
John McAfee.
There was a lot of very influential people that everyone knows predominantly around the world. And on the boat, I became very close friends with the chairman of the Bitcoin Association globally, Mr. Jimmy Wynn, who's recognized as in the top 50 IP tech patent lawyers in the world.
Phenomenal guy.
And having got to meet him and also a number of other people on the boat, everyone from the Roger Vers, the Winklevoss brothers and so on. And having met everyone on the boat, it forced me to come back off the boat and just look at the whole industry from a different lens and do a lot more due diligence, which put me down a deep rabbit hole to look into Mr. Craig Wright, Satoshi Nakamoto, because at the time I was a hard BTC maximalist and one of the anti-Craig Wright people. But most people don't go to the extent to look at the perspective and the due diligence on both sides of the equation. They're very quickly to just consume the knowledge that they've been fed via mainstream media, all the crypto Twitter and whatnot, and they don't actually do the DD. Whereas I've spent like literally years and years following the money, going down these rabbit holes to understand who and how Bitcoin was created. And it was fortunate enough to spend quite a bit of time with Craig, and that I've been to a number of the conferences around the world. CoinGeek was the most recent one just before COVID in London, where Dr. Craig and Calvin Ayre and Jimmy and all the rest of them are basically talking about how we can transition humanity into this information age, which is driven by the new microtransaction and data economy. But that was my whole, I guess, stepping stone into the cryptocurrency space, and has basically put me in a position of having a direct relationship with a lot of the industry leaders in the space.
And I remember when I heard this and it came back to me again and I started doing the research. And as I said, I believe that what you're saying is true. And my research shows the same, that Craig Wright is in fact Satoshi Nakamoto. When I heard that Satoshi, the founder of Bitcoin and or crypto in general, was an Aussie guy, I was like, that's not happening. But then if you look at the industry now, there's just no way we can go back to Web 2. I mean, it's too slow, it's too clunky, too few transactions per second, as you've shared with us before. And it's just not going to happen. Web 3 has to take place at some point. So how do you see that evolution from where we are now? For me, what I've done a lot of research on lately, and I love their opinion on this, you have the kind of government coming out with the central backed digital currencies, right? So this is something for you guys to write down: central backed digital currencies, CBDSs, central backed digital currencies. Yes, thank you. And so that's kind of my understanding, the government's push to get us to adopt a new financial system, which is still under the control of, the governments, the banks, the elites, the corrupt ones, whatever you want to call it, right? And then you have this Jasara Nasara financial, quantum financial system and other things. Will it be blockchain? Most likely. Web3 kind of has to be. What's your take on this situation right now?
Yeah, super interesting topic when you start to really dive deep, and this is a huge conversation. And I know that the people who are fortunate enough to actually attend your event in person, and the ones in particular I've spoke at, we really unpack this over that hour and a half, 2 hours. Like it's a deep
Dude, you got a
conversation.
standing ovation. You got to stand. This is ridiculous. People's like, whoa, this needs to be mainstream.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. This needs to be mainstream. And people at the event were coming up to me, like literally thanking me so much for bringing you on, for sharing it. And everyone's like, this needs to be mainstream. I said, the reason why it's not mainstream is because someone has a vested interest for people not to know what Rowan just shared, right? So just go there. Take it wherever you want to go, bro. Tell us, what do you think is going to happen between where we are now? A lot of uncertainty in the world financially. I just read recently, America's out of diesel. Okay, transport's about to stop. There's this worry about a war. There's this worry about a collapse of the financial system and excitement at the same time, because the old corrupt system has to go. The world is out of balance, right? Something else is coming. What's your thought on what's happening at the moment and where we're going?
This all, in my eyes, and this is the real beauty of Bitcoin in its original form, because this goes back thousands of years, right? When you look at the history of humanity and in particular currency, on average, every 100 years, our monetary system as such collapses. And there's no accurate record of the history of humanity. There's a lot of information that is siloed away and protected so that they're able to maintain order and control. And we're at a unique point in time where humanity is more connected than we've ever been before due to being able to access the internet at our fingertips with mobile phones. So when you look at this, where we've never had an accurate account of history, when you look at Bitcoin in its original form, which is bit, which is data, coin, which is money, there's this unique transition taking place where we have the ability to consume the internet layer, where all of a sudden all of big data is moved over onto a public, auditable, verifiable chain, both big data and money, which in essence creates a digital representation of the Akashic records.
Oh, can you say that one more time?
It is a digital representation of the Akashic records, because if you go out and fast forward now 100, 150 years, when as humans evolve and technology evolves and whatnot, we won't be able to, in a point in time again where we're repeating the same mistakes over and over again, because we have this accurate, transparent, auditable record where we can go back and go, hey, wait a minute, this shouldn't have happened. So tying into what you just brought up around like the finance system and where we're at as a whole, we are in a very unique point in time where like we can see hyperinflation in multiple different countries around the world. People are a little bit concerned about what's going on. Like the three key elements, what we need to be looking at is obviously energy, food, and water, because they're the three pillars which we all need as humans to survive. And
let's just take a note on that, guys. I've been talking about this since COVID hit. Energy, food, and water. How sustainable are you? And this is no scarcity. This is no doom and gloom. But like I said, in Europe, they're running out of gas. Okay, so they're going to have a very, very, very cold winter, particularly in England and other parts of Europe. Okay, so they're running out of power. America is running out of diesel. Okay, there's huge stoppages. Things are changing rapidly. So with this, without any scarcity, let's just be clear: food, water, and energy. How sustainable are you? Do you know your local farmers? Have you got, if suddenly transport did stop, you, I would imagine, have prepared yourself with food, energy, and water. Okay, back to you, bro.
Yeah, they're all definitely key areas, but I look at the bright side of all of this because I think there's that much like energy and good people behind what is going on in the world. It can't be stopped. So when you look at this transition period, for my generation and our generation, I'm super excited because like I've got to grow up like as a child without having a phone, then having like phone, internet, and now we're moving through this transition data-wise where there's opportunity everywhere, being able to build business on this infrastructure where it's participating in this whole microtransaction economy, which brings up that lower socioeconomic class and people in third world countries where all of a sudden they can participate in trade and global commerce because you're eliminating all of those intermediaries and third parties and the banking cartels as such, where everyone's taking their little percentage and clip of the ticket on the way through. So this is the part where the traditional way that you look at most business models that have existed over the 90s dot-com bubble and over the last 20 years in technology, a lot of these are going to be flipped on its head. So when you look at the opportunity there, it is everywhere. And I look at like government, and in particular, the International Monetary Fund and the Bank of International Settlements. They're like some of the key entities which are obviously pushing government and the Federal Reserve and the reserve banks in each of the countries around the world to roll out their government-backed CBDCs.
Yeah.
In saying that, when I look at the underlying protocol, and this, I don't want to go down too much of a technical hole, but when you look at what they're wanting to build and the protocols which they're building on versus Bitcoin in its true form, what they're building does not scale and will not compete. We'll see a point where it's the old Blockbuster meets Netflix, where you've got businesses that have built on the right foundation, which scale, which have a operational cost of like this, versus over here, where you've got all these businesses that are their fixed cost on a centralized infrastructure is like this, which doesn't put them in a good position to compete with the people doing right, which is on the public, auditable, verifiable ledger, which is Bitcoin. So it's super exciting when you look at this, because I had to, coming off the back of that boat, my mindset, I had to draw a hard line in the sand, because I used to be a bit of a libertarian anarchist, where I believed in this utopian world where it would just exist and everyone would just be good people. But after like learning about technology and a bit more, we're never going, I don't believe, this is just my view, I don't believe we'll have a free world where it enables and empowers criminals and corruption to prevail and just like kind of screw over the common man, mum, dad, and so on. So there's always going to be some need for a level of regulatory framework, not to say what we have now is right, but a level that is actually just robust and aligned with the good in the person who hasn't done ill by others and so on. But when you look at the, like privacy and anonymity and whatnot, the only way that we can keep large corporation and government accountable is to have a publicly verifiable, auditable time ledger as such. And that's the exciting part, because it's not only obviously keeping us accountable, but them. So that way they can't misuse and basically, dodgy books and all the rest of it.
I love that. And I think that's why I'm primarily concerned about the central bank digital currencies, because they are the new step of maybe what seems to be the corrupted ones. And it's so interesting because you look at some other countries, such as certain parts of the world. I mean, we're talking about traveling back to Indonesia. We've got some property down there and some things. And we looked at it and we're like, you know what? It's interesting because it's kind of corrupt at a social level. Okay, so something happens and
just do it.
Just do it, right? You might tip someone, local police officer or someone, and it's okay, right? No problems if you speed or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that we do that, but just as an idea, it's kind of corrupt on a social level. But it seems like in Australia and many other major countries is corrupt on a large political level. And unfortunately, that's where the decisions are coming from. So when I'm hearing about the central bank digital currencies to be rolled out, I think it's just a new attempt to keep us stuck and to keep the corrupt ones continuing their game. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. When you look at every 100 years, as I said earlier, every fiat currency system as such collapses. They're right now, when you look at like last time with the GFC in 08, they call it quantitative easing, and they just basically change the language of what the common man perceives as what is. Like even when just recently, when we looked at the last quarter rollover in the US, where you've got the old Joe Biden and what's the Jeremy Powell, the head of the I can't remember the entity, but you've got people like this that are now saying that the US is not in a recession. Whereas when you look at GDP,
because they changed the definition of recession.
They've changed everything. So they're changing the language to try and, move the viewpoint of the masses to go along with what they're wanting to do, which is obviously introduce their CBDCs and further perpetuate the current existing system, which is a debt fiat system, which essentially enslaves the average person within the system to be stuck in the 9 to 5, running on the hamster wheel around the world, continually exchanging time for money. This is why now, more important than ever, it's so important to have multiple revenue streams coming in, diversification across multiple different assets. As you've shared in a couple of your events, which I've attended, having accounts with multiple banks, different asset classes, having just a very broad, a broad portfolio of different financial instruments and liquidity. That way, you have the flexibility as to when and if. I don't think it's a matter of when; it's a matter of if. Like we are faced with challenges. You have that ability if you need to pick up, move your family, friends, change location, seek healthcare, additional food, water, whatever it may be, that you actually have that resource behind you to be able to, obviously look after you and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we're saying, firstly, I just want to be impeccably clear. Neither of us are providing any financial advice. These are our ideas, our experiences, what we've seen, what we've learned, what we've researched, what we've shared. Okay, guys, you have to make up your own mind on what's going on. But I think there's some really valid points here. So when, for example, a central bank digital currency, if and when they are rolled out, I, for one, personally only, and this is only personal, I'm not giving advice, but sharing my personal opinion, I, for one, will be very, very careful before I say yes. But let's be clear, it's a no from me. Okay. So, but we have other things that are coming up in the world as well, things that are changing, things that are adapting and modifying. So I think just to be clear, they changed the definition of a so-called recession so that they could say that we're not in a recession. Data shows we're already deep into a recession. I'm actually really excited about this. I hold space and with love and compassion for those who are suffering and will be suffering, of course. Having said that, our students have heard about this since COVID first hit. COVID has been the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in the history of our species. And so someone has had a vested interest in what has been going on. I think for us, it's really important now to consider, okay, well, if this is transitioning, what might be next? And you can kind of prepare yourself, without even knowing what's coming. You can prepare yourself with food, energy, water, diversifying your assets across different avenues and so on and so forth. I just checked in with I just coached my elite students yesterday. I was talking about diversification, as in Warren Buffett says, diversification and allocating your assets into different avenues, if you will. He calls the only free lunch in investing. And so I was sharing about this yesterday, and I was talking about precious metals. And I was saying one of the best ways to be able to diversify is to potentially have some gold and silver. Again, not financial advice, but something to consider. And then one of my students said, he took my, from the conversation we had recently, and he went down to purchase some gold and silver, and they now have a 10-week wait on standard silver delivery. So guess what? The asset is going up in value because it's now scarce. Okay. I've been accumulating that type of equity for 4 years across many different areas of the world. So it's something that we've been speaking on for a long time. And now that Russia has pegged the Russian ruble to gold, while it may just be quite likely that the value of precious metals, gold, silver, will coming up in the future. We may be wrong. Don't go and put all your eggs in one basket. But if you don't own any precious metals, I believe it's God's money, could be something to consider. And I know we've talked about cryptocurrency as well, which is really exciting. Now, what's going to happen? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Who knows? Maybe it has a strong correction. Maybe it goes back up. It's hard to say. But one thing I think we could agree on is that Web3 and the technology that is built as blockchain is the only way to go. You can't go back to Web2. Is that correct? It's just going to be too slow, too clunky. What are your thoughts?
I have an amazing analogy for this, which I think the viewers will absolutely love. And this isn't financial advice, but when you look at like assets like that, as Espen just mentioned, that are like gold, silver, that there's a scarcity limit. When you look at Bitcoin in its true form, there's a limit of 21 million coins. You picture real estate when you look at like the capital cities, and what happens is when all the most valuable land is taken up, prices obviously go up and people start to build up. When you look at this whole digital transition where we go over Web 3, 4, 5 and so on into this data economy, when I look at Bitcoin in its true form, having those 21 million coins you want to accumulate as many of them as possible. And in particular, Bitcoin SV is what I'm referring to when I say Bitcoin, not BTC, Bitcoin SV. And they're currently around about $50 a coin at the moment. But when you have this liquidity and you're sitting in here, as businesses and more companies move over into this data economy, they need that liquidity to be able to operate and to transact. So what happens is, as that liquidity gets bought up by larger institutions and whatnot, it creates scarcity, which actually pushes the price up because it has real world utility. It's not speculation where it's like dependent on retail investors, mums and dads, and people throwing more money in. It's actual real world utility where you are actually driving your business. And this ties back into where I said earlier, where you've got businesses that build on the right layer, which has this much operational expenses, versus over here, which has this much. So it's like land banking. The more of that liquidity you buy up over the next 5, 10, 15 years, you'll have the liquidity that's required for all of business, and like government included, for their infrastructure to operate as we transition into this digital economy.
Yeah, I heard an analogy a little while ago. So if you continue to build on Web 2, which is like you look at your standard technology now, your Visa, your MasterCard, how many transactions can they do per second approximately at the moment?
Visa and MasterCard do between 25 and 30,000 transactions per second. BTC, Bitcoin, which everyone believes is Bitcoin, it does around 7 transactions a second. If you think about just think about the email for a second. Imagine if the email, when it first came out, we were told that the email, you can only do 7 emails per second around the world. It would not scale to what the email is today. So when you look at being able to compete with Visa, MasterCard, and actually consume that and the whole internet layer, you need to be able to process billions and billions of transactions a second at an extremely low cost. And this all ties into IPv6, because we're running out of IPv4 addresses, which are the IPv addresses that we see on the internet.
Mm-hmm. And so something like Bitcoin SV can transact approximately how many per second?
Currently, right now on mainnet, it's doing in excess of 150,000 transactions a second. But over the coming year, 2 years and whatnot, we're going to see that to go to being able to handle millions, if not billions, of transactions per second.
Yeah. So just look at this, guys. And just to be clear, we're not talking about necessarily purchasing a coin and hodling the coin. What we're talking about is the technology of which it is built and how that will scale through business moving forward. And also how inexpensive it is to make those transactions. You transfer from one bank to the other, there's a cost. You make a payment over, using Stripe, and great, but that's a cost, right? And everything is controlled by the guys at the bottom. Consciously, they're often at the bottom. That we call them at the top. Maybe financially they're at the top, but maybe not in terms of love and consciousness. But that's just my opinion. Okay, bro. So I wanna wrap this back to you and to your story. I want to really come back to how a person can go from perceiving failure, going through health challenges, having breakdowns, losing. This is really important for me to speak to. Losing millions and millions and millions of dollars. Everything is gone. You're back to scratch, back to being a tradie. Okay, I just want people to kind of absorb this at the moment, because so often when I coach people and I talk about successful entrepreneurs like yourself, there's so often what seems like a setback, a major setback, failure, challenges, traumas. But it's so often, even if you look at most millionaires, been bankrupt several times, lost everything, started again. So it seems like most people think that the asset is money, when it's not money. The asset is the skills that you have and the determination that you can create. And when you will lose it all, literally in the water, millions gone, back to being a freaking tradie, that's when you build tenacity. That's when you start again. So can you talk a little bit about your perspective on this for those out there? It doesn't matter if you've accumulated capital or if you've not. If you want to be successful, it's in here and it's in here. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Like most millionaires and people that have created significant wealth that I've either learnt under or spoken with, like they've had multiple fails throughout their careers and like bankruptcies and all of those things. And I think like falling off the horse, as people say, like, and just getting back on, I've always had like a really like fire within my belly and clear vision as to what I wanted to create and what I wanted to do. And I would just not let anything get in my way. And I'm a little bit impatient in ways, as you kind of alluded to in the earlier there, just getting in and just having a go. That's the best way I've found over the years, is just learning on the fly and just taking immediate action. Because the more you put time and energy into something, you learn from the failures and you know what not to do next time, whilst at the same time having that, I guess, stepping out of your comfort zone and being on that edge point where you're teetering on what you already know, where you've got a whole lot of complacency, versus just out here on the edge and going, this is exciting, it's exhilarating. And for me, yeah, like over the last few years, having gone from electrician by trade to setting up Coin Capital Ventures, which is our crypto fund, and then at the exact same period, I set up coinvault.com, which was one of Australia's first OTC desks. Throughout this whole process, like, it's never been easy for me. Like, I has faced troubles with the regulators due to licenses and things like this. And it's just like throughout my journey, this is just me in particular, I got asked the question years ago from one of my mentors, what is it that you truly want? And I started off like materialistic things, and they kept asking the same question over and over. And one of my business partners and mentors still to this day, Luke Anderson, he's only 33 years old and created a very large amount of wealth in excess of the hundreds of millions of dollars and whatnot. And having seen what he created without having to have a laptop and just being able to operate from his phone, when that question was asked to me, I was like, what is it that I truly want? It's time freedom, the ability to do whatever, whenever, wherever. And this ties into that cash flow quadrant. When I seen that combined with that the 4-hour work week from Tim Ferriss, I looked at 95% of people are on the left-hand side of the quadrant, where only 5% of the wealth is. They're either employees, which are continually exchanging time and energy for money, or they're small to medium business operators, which are continually changing time and energy for money. And if they go away for an extended period, 9 times out of 10, their business falls over because they don't have the systems and automation within their business there. Then you move over to the right side of the quadrant, where you've got 95% of the wealth, yet only 5% of the population and less. Up the top right, you've got big business, which is 500 employees or more. And I looked at all of these corporate guys that are still stuck in the rat race, so to speak, away from family and having to show up in their suit and tie every day to work and whatnot. And I was like, that's not what I want to create. Then you move down to the bottom right of the quadrant, which is the investor. And that component of the quadrant, my biggest learning, and I'd love for everyone to take this away, when you see that the investor in the quadrant is the only one who ever achieves time freedom and actually comprehend that, there's some basic money management principles there when it comes to, it doesn't matter where you are in the quadrant, whether you're in employee or small, medium business still, whatever. If you can have that discipline where you've already got your little nest egg, which is saved, and then everything above that little nest egg, you start getting that money working for you and starting to put that in other different asset classes, whether it's crypto, managed funds, index funds, having a financial advisor, just starting to get that property and so on, starting to get that money working for you. And if you can do that consistently over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, all of a sudden, that wealth that you've just put over here is working for you. And if you've been smart with it and have got good people around you, all of a sudden that starts yielding you more return per annum than what you are earning over here in your 9 to 5 or business, where all of a sudden you're in a completely different position where you can actually pick and choose where that you're putting your time and energy into, how that your money's working for you. And if it wasn't for going down this journey that I have, where I took a number of big risks early on the piece, I got out of the land I had and the property I had and put it into other asset classes, which I had more expertise in. And I had a big loss early in the beginning, which was great, which taught me a lot about due diligence and just trying to, I guess, ensure that there's a number of unfair advantages and I can see a clear path to having an exit for anything that I'm putting my money into. and ensuring it's protected, obviously. But having learnt those learnings early on in the piece, it, I guess, sped up my whole journey towards creating time freedom. But that basic principle, you don't need to know what you're wanting to do in life, where you're going to be or where you're going to end up, because no matter what you're doing out there currently, if you can just have that basic understanding and comprehend about how to get your money working for you and continually do that on a week-to-week basis and have that discipline in place, it doesn't matter. It could be 5, it could be 3, 5, 10 years. Either way, you're going to reach a point in your life where you've created time freedom and an engine of assets that's just going to tick over and continually compound on top of each other, yielding you more and more. And then you can do whatever you like. You're at a different point in your life where you can, focus on the things that you're passionate about and whatnot. But that little principle there and having that basic money management skill, that's something that, I'm forever grateful for. And it's what's changed the whole trajectory of finance for me, business for me, travel, everything. Because obviously having money enables you to participate in whatever you want to do globally, and it gives you that luxury of being able to travel and lift friends, family up and help others out and just give in general.
Yeah. The secret to living is giving, to contribute more when you have more. I love it. I think this is a great way to transition into what you're doing now. What are you up to? I know you're big in the energy space. You've done some really cool things overseas in Norway. Tell us about some of the projects that you're working on now and why.
Yeah, definitely. This kind of goes back, and just to kind of paint a picture here for everyone, when I look at the world and how the world works and the ruling elite from all the way down through the central banks, having exposure in the finance sector, I quickly seen the likes of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, and how that capital flows through venture capital, private equity, and through financial institutions globally. And a big part of me and what I wanted to create and legacy I wanted to leave in this world is obviously impact in a positive way that leads towards a greater experience for humanity and the planet. And the only way to do that in my eyes is conscious capitalism. And when I hear that, I don't want to have having to take money from people that I guess have ill intentions and aren't aligned with how I want to impact the world. So rather than having to leverage capital, which I can follow up the tree to these institutions, I've been out building my own resource, which is all of the capital that I have behind me, to be able to consciously invest into companies and businesses and founders that are impacting the world in a positive way. And that's everything from in the energy sector, which you've obviously alluded to a little bit. We've got a fairly large green data center, which is both here in Australia and also over in Norway. It's currently positioned to be the largest 100% green Bitcoin miner in the world that's globally diverse by, I'd say, mid next year. As it stands right now, we are the largest globally diverse green Bitcoin miner on the planet. But that's one of the ventures that I've got going on, which is super, super exciting. And for anyone who wants to keep an eye on that one, I'm happy to have a look at that. That's Archon Energy. It'll be listed on the New York Stock Exchange sometime early next year. Other ones which we're looking at, we're actually in the process of setting up a fund next year in, I'd say, Q2. Given I grew up out in a small rural country town, I've always had a passion for agriculture, farming, and just that whole kind of background. So our fund, which we're setting up next year, is specifically focused on water, food, and energy, being the 3 pillars I mentioned earlier, which obviously make the world go round and are key for sustainability for humanity. And then obviously technology on that. So there are 4 pillars. But in terms of specific companies that are out there helping the world and in a positive way, there's some insane technology out there. And being in wearing the investor hat is such a cool thing, because every opportunity that comes, most people spend their life in one profession, and that's all that they know. When you wear that investor hat, you get to go down all these different business models, do your due diligence and understand and comprehend how that they work and what that looks like into the future. So you get to see some really, really cool things. So I think at the moment we're across ad tech, agriculture, like some microbiology stuff, data centers, as I mentioned. We're across a lot in the blockchain space. So there's a whole heap of different companies that are building out infrastructure on Bitcoin. That's everything from health data to mindset and just lifting people up in mental health. There's also, what else do we have? We've got medical cannabis. I've been in that industry now since 2020, and psychedelics. There's a range of different things that we've got exposure to at the moment. But yeah, each and every week I'm pitched different ideas from multiple different verticals around the world, and yeah, it's cool. But yeah, I'm always looking for new opportunities to come. So that's one thing. If people have got something that's exciting that they're working towards, and they're at a point where they've got revenue, they're ready to start to scale their business and whatnot, I'm always open to having a conversation and looking over businesses and seeing where that's at. And if I'm not able to help out on the investment front, we've also got a consultant agency, the Conscious Advisory, where we help businesses that are aligned with how we see the world unfolding, that have got a track record, and they're at that point where they've already got, money behind them. However, they want to scale to that next level. We step in and help them out with licensing, distribution, anything that we can do to help to accelerate their journey, to help scale that business up, so it just leads to a bigger impact in the world faster rather than later.
Yeah, I love it. And I remember we've been talking about, your mission and what you're doing in the world, and you're about to set sail and travel and do some absolutely awesome things. I want to just ask you one question. Okay. So the people watching, listening, taking notes, going back, listening to it again, literally writing down the pillars that we've learned today, and maybe asking the question such as, okay, how can I find the masters? How can I model the masters in my field? Where do I find them? How do I reach out to them? And literally just writing down some of these notes that we've discussed. I know we talked a lot about tech, which is really important in what's coming in Web3 and future and blockchain, and et cetera, et cetera. I want to ask you a question. And this is a question that I love to ask the people that I interview, right? Just one. Yeah, this is a big one. This is a big one, bro. Here it is. I want you to now imagine that you're on the world stage, okay? The whole world is watching and listening, and you're stepping up on stage and you got a message to share. It could be in relation to the topics that we've discussed, or it could be something completely different. When you're on the world stage, you step up and you have a message to the world. Please take your time, take a breath, whatever, and do share. What is your message to the world right now?
Great question. I'd probably say something along the lines like, I believe that majority of the people in the world are good people, and love is needed for that. And when you look at that as the underlying thing and energy that drives the world, like love, connection, and whatnot, I'd say like whatever's going on in your world, the noise, the toxicity, whatever's like that is distracting you and stopping you from stepping into your power, let that go and just get clear on what you want to do, how you want to help, and just get in and get it done. Like there's nothing stopping you. The only thing that is stopping you is in here. So the sooner you can start to work on that and empower yourself, that's going to not only help you in your immediate reality, but the ripple effect is going to go through your friends, your family, to your broader community, and so on. So if you've got something that you're working on and you know it's going to help the world in a positive way, whatever hurdles come your way, whatever challenges, do not stop. Persist through, keep going. It will get better. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And something that I've actually got tattooed down my arm, and it's something I've like lived by, the only time you run out of chances is when you stop taking them. So just keep going. That's what I'd have to say to everyone, because it doesn't matter who you are in the world. Like I went from being an electrician by trade, kicked out of school, mixed up in wrong circles with drugs and all the rest of it, to at the moment, like where I'm at is incredible. And if I was to go back and look at that 16, 15-year-old me back then, I had no idea that I'd be in the position that I am today. And even my family, like my parents were like, they were like, I have conversations now with my mum and dad, and they were like concerned for me. They were like, you're going down a very like dark path, but just being able to flip that switch within an instant and just come back to that and continue on that path. We all have that power within to do it. You just need to recognize it and do it. What's the saying? Just do it.
Boom.
There it is.
Oh, I love how you took it home like that, brother. Thank you very much. That was a soul bump moment. Thank you very much. Tell us, where can people go to find out more about you? How do they stay in touch and so on and so forth?
The best way to contact me would be on LinkedIn. It's probably the socials that I use the most out of everything. However, I am on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. However, there are a couple of fake accounts out there, so you just have to be careful. Don't reach out to those accounts and think that it's me. I'll never sell you anything on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, just to be clear. So don't ever fall into any of those corruptions things out there and Ponzi schemes and whatnot. So I'd say reach out to me at my LinkedIn, or if you wanted to reach out to me via email, it's Rowan, ROWAN, at coincapitalvforvictor.com.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing your time with us today, bro. I know you're really busy. You got a lot on. I want to really say thank you for showing up. And I really love what you're sharing. I love the fact that you're talking about drawing a line in the sand and not paying life force energy or money to any other corrupt stuff that goes all the way up to the top. And so much of it is these days, but rather to take this opportunity to invest in ourselves, to do what we believe in, and to not stop and never, ever, ever give up when you know you've got something that the world could benefit from and that you could benefit from. Dude, what a brilliant takeaway.
Big love to you too also, man. Like what you're doing in the world, the people get like insane transformation out of each of your events is incredible. And I haven't got to experience them personally and spend quite a lot of time with you. Mate, I love what you're doing in the world. You've always got my support, and I just love it because there's people like us that are stepping up, taking action, shining the light for others to be able to say, hey, we can do it too. And let's just make a better world. Like, let's do it.
And so it is. Thank you, Mr. Rowan Hill. Until next time, everybody. Thank you.
See you guys.